have the honor and privilege of being the MC for Affiliate Summit East 2012. Welcome. Thank you, yes. I have a few announcements to read, and then we're going to bring up our keynote speaker for the morning. So here we go. Free Wi-Fi in the keynotes, the breakout sessions, and the dining and networking areas. The idea, wow, it's early. The ID is Affiliate Summit, and the password is ASE12 Wi-Fi, and it is case sensitive, so get all those capital letters in there. Follow ASE12 on Twitter and at Affiliate Summit, news, promos, and networking. Enter the Vegas Baby competition for a chance to win a VIP pass to Affiliate Summit West 2013, which is happening at Caesars Palace in January from the 13th to the 15th. Registration is now open. We need your feedback. If you haven't downloaded the Event Method app yet, it's really cool. You can give all of your feedback for all the sessions, get schedules, speaker information. It's available for Android and iPhone. It's really cool, and I think they did a great job with it. Have you joined the Affiliate Summit Forum? Forum.affiliatesummit.com. Network, learn, and have fun. There's a great community there that's going on 24/7 with conversations, education, and lots to learn. And anything you want to know about Affiliate Summit, you can go ask questions, learn a lot. The largest Affiliate Summit East to date, 4,279 attendees. Give yourselves a round of applause. It's fantastic. Growth year after year, show after show, it's fantastic, and thank you for being here. Free hot pretzels in the exhibit hall, both floors from 2 to 4. I heard applause, right? Yeah? From 2 to 4 p.m. today. Go get a pretzel. Closing keynote from Dave Couples is going to be in this room at 3:30 p.m. Be here. He's a great speaker. You'll enjoy it. And now on to the keynote, which I have on my cheat sheet here. On to our keynote speaker. The story of Nigerian-born Ntiedo, and I knew I was going to mess that up, man. I practiced and practiced. You must get that a lot, right? Etuk. His story begins with a dream to build big and the need to give back. While pursuing a successful career with some of the country's largest corporations, such as Bank One and Citigroup, NT decided that what he wanted to build was a global company that would fundamentally change the way kids learn. NT was volunteering at the Big Brothers Big Sisters program in Delaware when a student that he was tutoring in algebra said, "This isn't fun." That's when a light bulb went off. NT realized that the biggest problem in education wasn't class size, wasn't teacher proficiency, or even facilities. It's that learning wasn't fun. That's when NT decided to start DimensionU, formerly Tabula Digita, an education company built on the premise that students are a customer in education. They could be provided with tools that make learning fun. It would be a complete package. The teaching of key skills like math and literacy, interesting formats, video games, and compelling rewards like social status and pride, and even the opportunity to earn their next iPod. The DimensionU learning system has been an award-winning success. It serves students K through 12 in subjects ranging from math and literacy to science and history. Millions of games have been played in homes around the world, and in some of the nation's largest school districts, such as Chicago, Dallas, and right here in New York City. Thanks to NT, DimensionU has reinvented the way students consume information and has motivated them to learn. Recognition. NT is a member of the 2010 Henry Crown Fellows class at the Aspen Institute and a member of the Aspen Institute's Nigeria Leadership Initiative Program. He's been honored as a top entrepreneur and a Silicon Alley one to watch by Crain's New York. He's been featured in Forbes, Business Week, and the New York Times, and has been on NBC, CNBC, Fox, among others. In 2011, NT was invited to meet President Obama and was invited to sit on Mayor Bloomberg's New York City Council on the Technology and Innovation Economy. He is a graduate of both Cornell University and Columbia Business School, And he's a black belt in Taekwondo, so I hope I didn't screw this up too badly or I could be in trouble, which I might have. If he roundhouse kicks me on the way out of here. Please welcome NT. Thank you very much.
You'll have to excuse me, I'm gonna flip this out. I brought my textbook, so we're gonna ask you questions. There'll be a quiz at the end. Okay. All set? Okay, thank you very much. All right, as you heard, my name is NT. Please don't call me ET. I get that a lot. My full name is Ntiedo, which I get Nintendo. So I don't like that either. But although I guess since I started an educational video game company, it's a little appropriate. First of all, thank you for inviting me and thank you for coming. I know it's early. I barely made it out of bed this morning. I want to talk to you about the revolution in education. This is something that I know we wake up every day, and especially here in the US, it's like a continuous sort of drumbeat of bad news, you know, about schools and about how the education system is doing. And I'm an entrepreneur. I created a company called DimensionU, which creates multiplayer educational video games. So imagine Halo. Maybe you know Halo? Minus the violence, but allowing kids to play against each other while they're learning math and literacy, like around the world, right? So this side of the room could play the middle side, could play this part, could play this part. You could all compete against each other. But there was a deeper sort of philosophical idea behind it and a larger problem that we were attempting to solve. And some of it we did actually use affiliate marketing to do that. So I'm going to be very excited to talk about, you know, all of that. But here's the big issue. Here in the US, I know that about 15% of the population of the Affiliate Summit is from other parts of the world, so we can talk to that as well. I'm going to use most of my stats around the United States, though. Here in the US, there's a real battle that's raging. And it's not what you normally think of. It's not what's happening in Iran. It's not what's happening in Syria, etc. The battle is actually for the hearts and minds of our kids. And it's trying to get them engaged in the educational process, because I travel the world, and in education, there are a lot of different things that happen. Education is very cultural. If you go to Korea, for example, you go to school, then you go to after-school programs, and sometimes you do not go home until 7 o'clock at night. Compare that to what we're doing here. If you look at Japan, for example, we live in a society where the rights of the individual are so important and so critical that I almost say we give our kids the right to screw up their education. Because in Japan, you don't want to be different from everybody else. If everybody's studying, you're studying. Let's look at India, let's look at China. Over 1 billion people. I was just in India in January. And I was shocked the way that they think about things, just pure scale. Do you know the size of the Indian middle class is 300 million people? That's the size of America. If the top 1% of the United States is really the group that's moving, you know, sort of everything forward, as people like to say, if you listen to the pundits or whatever. In India, that's 100 million people. That's 1/3 of the population. And this is who we're competing against. This is who we're up against. And so we have to find a solution that actually works for America, for Americans, in terms of getting our kids motivated, getting them excited about education, and getting them to move forward. So that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about. By the way, how many of you have kids? All right. How many of you play video games? How many of you have kids who play video games? All right. And how many of you approve of that? I think like 2 people raised it. It's okay. Let me tell you why you should approve it. We'll get to all of that. But I grew up, let me give you a little bit of background. I grew up in Nigeria. I was born in Nigeria. My father's from Nigeria. My mother's from the Bahamas. And one of the things that you learn very, very early on there, because you see it every day when you walk outside, is the huge differentiation between wealth and poverty. Now, that house on the left is actually Bill Gates' house. We actually don't have that in Nigeria. But The other is a slum. It's actually not in Nigeria, but you can see the difference. And I saw that every day when I walked outside in Nigeria. And I sat there and I said, okay, this is really, really interesting. Look at the folks who are on the side of the road. What's the difference between me? What's the difference between me and them? What's the difference between anyone in this audience and them? And the answer, in my opinion, is that. It's the birth lottery. We have absolutely nothing to do with it. We got lucky. That could have been us in one of those situations, and what is it that we can do that would allow us to make a difference in our circumstances? And that's a huge question. It's something that I take sort of personal interest in because my family has been very, very committed to the idea of education, I guess going back 2 or 3 generations. It's an interesting statistic. My grandfather paid his way to come here from Nigeria in the 1930s, and he went to Columbia Teachers College. Then he went back. My aunt came in the 1970s to go to Columbia Teachers College, went back to teach, again. I came and I went to Columbia Business School. I guess I'm the only greedy capitalist in my family. But in any case, I really felt that on both sides of the family, the Bahamian side, the same thing. We were really able to move ourselves forward, and we'd love to do the same for everyone else. So here's me. It's an inauspicious beginning. I said that I won the birth lottery, or I didn't win the birth lottery. I said that some people win the birth lottery. I clearly did not. I do not know why they have me in knee-high socks. But the green and the white, those are the colors of Nigeria, so I assume we were very sort of patriotic. I have no idea. But clearly I was pretty happy, or they were holding like a lollipop or something. In Nigeria, I was there until 14. Urkel was my little brother. I actually became a teenage computer nerd. I taught myself 6 programming languages by the time I was 11. I was teaching. I was doing assembly language, C++, C, Z basic, you name it. In fact, I like to say that if I had been here in the United States, then it would have been Steve, Bill, and T. No, that's my alter ego, Mr. T. Used to love that. I don't know if you guys remember the A-Team, but I used to love that show. And if I had been here in the States, then maybe it would have been like the 3 of us. Highly doubtful. In any case, I went on and did some very profound thinking while I was in high school. I came to boarding school here in the United States, studied Kafka, really liberal arts, liberal arts education, Kafka and all the rest of that. Went on to do electrical engineering at Cornell. So I studied computers, quantum mechanics, figured out how to build this stuff. And then once I graduated, I went on and I did credit card analysis. It was great. Deep thinking, then all of a sudden I'm trying to get you to figure out how to increase your debt. But something interesting did happen, along the way. I did become a tutor. So while I was working at Bank One in their credit card division, I actually had a little brother in Big Brothers Big Sisters. And his mom wanted me to teach him algebra. Right? Okay, so algebra is x plus y equals 5. When I sat down with this young man, his name was Darian, I sat down with him and I asked him what 5 times 7 was. And it took him about 10 seconds to get the wrong answer. So I'm like, all right, this is a real problem. We have to catch you up on 2nd through 8th grade in about a month because you're going into 9th grade. And so we sat there. I know how to do math. I did electrical engineering. I did computer science. You just hit it. You hit it, you hit it, you hit it. So we sat down and we hit it. Drill and kill all day, baby. This was great. And after about a month, he was making real progress. Knew his stuff. He was starting to answer it. After about 2 months, he fired me. He basically went to his mom and asked her to ask me to stop. It was like I was doing medieval torture or something. And I went to him and I was so traumatized. I went to him, I asked him, what happened? We were just making progress, etc. And he said, you know what, I really like you, but we never have any fun. And so that was sort of the eureka moment. That was when it all went off and I realized, oh, we've got a whole generation of kids who are actually, interestingly enough, taking education too seriously. All of this sort of standardized stuff, you got to hit this score, you got to do this, we're taking the fun out of education and we're losing them. We're completely losing them. In fact, if you look at No Child Left Behind, which was a law that was passed, it focuses completely on the ability to increase scores, but has nothing in there about whether or not the kids are actually paying attention. There's a lot of knowledge in this book. I know maybe 10% of kids who would actually pick it up and open it. Okay, so we had to do something to do that, to get better at getting kids sort of involved. So anyway, I moved on. I went back to business school. I graduated from there, and I found respectability. Started a company. Was able to buy a jacket. Unfortunately, this is my avatar, right? And I had the flat top, because when I graduated from college, I had a flat top. I can tell you for sure that when I got rid of it, my dating life improved dramatically. The tongue was actually a testament to Michael Jordan. I don't know if you remember when he dunked on people, his tongue was always out. I was like, I'm going to be dunking on people. I'm going to be dunking on education, making this happen. Anyway, that was my philosophy. That was my theory. That's what I was going to make happen. But along the way, and I know many of you are entrepreneurs, you clearly run across a set of problems. And you know, my challenge along the way was funding. Now, ultimately, we're in a place now we've raised over $20 million in venture capital. But back at the very beginning, nobody wanted to give us money. Nobody wanted to give us money. I was begging. I was going to people and I was saying, hey, could you please give us some money? And they're like, why should I give you money? You have no education background. You didn't actually program video games for a living. Like, why should I give you money? Be like, because you're my mom? Like, you know, the whole friends and family thing, because you know, my family did you. I have no idea. Could you please give me some money? So we ended up raising, you know, probably on the order of, I don't know, before we got our venture capital, $1.2 million from friends and family over the course of like 3 or 4 years. But the very first amount of funding that we got was actually from a good friend of mine, now John Katzman, who started the Princeton Review. Now, John is a maverick in the industry. I love John very, very much. But at the time, I was working at Citigroup. We were doing this on the side. And it was me and I had a co-founder. And I had him working on this full time. And so I decided in around March or April, because we were running low on cash, it's March or April, yeah. We were running low on cash, had used a whole bunch of consultants. We'd raised at that time about $400,000 and I had about $8,000 left. Because I was really not very good at being an entrepreneur. So I decided I was going to leave my job at Citigroup and you got to take the plunge. So I took the plunge. I jumped in with $8,000 left. And I was paying my partner $48,000 a year here in New York City. It's not a whole lot, so that's $4,000 gone for him. You know, and then $4,000 potentially for myself. I had a little bit saved up from my job. But what I started to do, the reason why I left was because previously, in September of the year before, September of that year, I had gone and I'd sat down with John and I'd said, John, you know, I'd really love the Princeton Review to invest some money in the company. And he was like, well, what do you do? I was like, well, educational video games could be really interesting. Testing, you know, testing of kids in and around SATs. And he was like, that sounds pretty interesting. We shook hands and he was like, all right, we'll get this done. He said, we'll get it done by December. December rolls around. They're getting ready for their annual retreat. Nothing's happened. John, what's going on? January comes. He says, okay, I've got a vice president I'm going to put on it. So he puts this vice president on. We start negotiating. We go through January, February, March. We are this close. We are this close to getting this deal done. Like, you know, it's all sort of negotiated out, et cetera. We're pretty proud of it. Walk into John with this. Mind you, I quit my job now. So I quit my job because I knew this was going to happen. Walked into John. John took a look at the agreement, and he pretty much threw it on the ground. He's like, I don't even know what this thing says. So I'm sitting out, I'm out, like, you know, $4,000 left because $4,000 went to my co-founder, sitting there with $4,000 left, no agreement in sight. I had no idea what was going to happen. Of course, the vice president who was in charge of all of this was pretty, you know, he was concerned about going back to John again. Okay, so at that point in time, I had to swallow my pride. I didn't want to go back to my friends and family, so I had 2 friends who I could go to, 2 last friends, who I could go to, and I could borrow money from them. I hate borrowing money. I worked in the credit card industry. I know the downside of borrowing money. I hate borrowing money. I begged them. They gave me $22,000. This was like a huge hit to my pride. So I went in, $22,000. And I said, I will pay you back in 6 months. Had no idea how I was going to do it. $22,000. I immediately put half of it down and said, Rob, that was my co-founder's name, fix this product. I will fix the agreement. You fix the product. So we went. There's $10,000 left over. After that, again, another 2 months for him of salary, and I didn't really have, you know, salary, so I wasn't really paying myself. We go through, we get to June. June of that year, I walk into John. I'm like, let's sit down and let's talk. And I show him the product that had been built out. And he sits down and he starts playing with it. And he sits back and he gets really, really silent. And he says to me, the part that I thought the Princeton Review would play, you've already done. I get really cold inside because, you know, we're done. Like, there was no plan B. And he says, but, what if we were to co-brand this? And I realized he was negotiating. I was like, oh, well, you know, if you wanted to co-brand this, and you got to put it on the website, you got to do this, you got to do that. But more than anything, John, you have to get this deal done in like 2 weeks. And the reason why was because I was out of cash. So, you know, he was like, yeah, I have a new general counsel, we'll get this thing done. So he puts the new general counsel on it, and every single person seemed to want to renegotiate the deal again. So the general counsel is new, she comes in, and she says, let's start from the beginning. I'm like, what? So we start from the beginning, and we negotiate this thing again. Of course, it takes more than 2 weeks. I am pulling things out, like when she tries a particular negotiation point, I pull an email out that says, John and I are trying to figure out what kind of champagne we're going to get when the deal's finally done. I'm like, don't mess with me, I'm a friend of John. I'm like pulling stuff like that out of my, you know, where. And this stuff is going through. Finally, we seem to get this done. Guess when? September 15th. From June to September. At this point in time, I'm like done. I'm on fumes, you know, right now. And I say, are we finally done? She's like, we're done. But we can't pay you until October 1st. Because they wanted the new quarter. And I was like, wait a second. I don't know if any of you have ever tried to sleep for 2 weeks, but that's basically what I did. I slept for 2 weeks. I was convinced that every single day I woke up, something was going to happen to this deal and it was going to disappear. On October 1st, I put on my best suit. I pulled out like a special pen that my uncle had bought me because I was going to go and sign with this special pen. And I walked into the office, convinced that they were going to say the deal isn't done. Walked in, signed the document, and they transferred $100,000 to me. Now, at that point in time, I had $300 left in our business account and $27 left in my personal account. And I talk to entrepreneurs all the time and say, how do you know if you have what it takes to be an entrepreneur? And I always say to them, if you haven't been up against the wall, if you haven't been down to your last, sort of your wit's end, then I'm not sure that you know. And that's what we had to go through to try to get an idea off the ground that hadn't been tried before. And since then, I've been dealing with these guys. I still think of them as vulture capitalists. But anyway, we took in a lot of venture funding. Some of them are really great. Others of them are, you know, interesting. But the other thing that we've always had to deal with was the culture problem, right? Motivation, that's the real education problem in my mind. It's not what to teach or how to teach. It's actually whether or not you can get the kids to want to learn it. Let me show you some stats. So let me talk to you about some stats. 90% of instructors still rely on textbooks, this stuff. Kids don't want to pick them up, kids don't want to use them. 61% of students in the United States find school boring. This was an OECD study. The only country that ranked lower than that was Ireland on this study. Okay? 30% of US high school students drop out, and we do not do a very good job in math, in science, and we still struggle with literacy. These are common pictures that you'll see from within some of the nation's schools. And we keep having the same conversation over and over and over again. It's the traditional conversation. I feel like, you know, when I started the company, I felt like the conversation, if you look around the world actually, the whole world is set up to answer the question, how do you give a kid that wants a great education that great education? The entire world is set up like that. That is a supply-side question. That's why the answers are things like increased federal funding. Smaller class size. By the way, let you in on a little secret. A smaller class, the bad teacher is still a bad class. Just a little secret, right? Charter schools. We talk about adequate yearly programs. We talk about voucher programs. This is all supply side stuff. The only problem with all of this stuff is that it doesn't scale. It simply doesn't scale. There is nobody who's having a national conversation around how do we get kids to pay attention. Facebook, 900 million people in 7 years. How do we get that to happen? Let's change the question from how do we get every kid, how do we give every kid a great education? Let's change it to how do we get every kid to demand a great education. I will know my job is done when Johnny or Jane goes home and says, you know what, Mom? I need to get off the phone because I want to do my algebra. That's when I know that I'll be done. Now, will I ever get there? I said I'm like Sisyphus, right? Rolling it uphill. But let's remember who our customers. These are our kids, right? This is what they like to do. This is what they do in their free time, their spare time. How do you get kids like this to listen to or talk about physics, chemistry, algebra, arithmetic? How do you get them to talk about Shakespeare? Shoot, I'll be happy if they just talk about, like, I don't know. Anyway, whatever. And let's look at some of the data. If you look at some of the data, media use over time from 1999 to 2009, from 8 to 18-year-olds, the only thing that has decreased is print. 43 minutes down to 38 minutes. Guess what the majority of the things that we have in our classroom are? Print. But if you add video games and computers together, then that's actually gone from about 53 minutes to an hour and 40 or so minutes per day that people are spending. Now, where are they going to do this? Well, we have them at school. They're captive. Doesn't matter if they're asleep or not. Let's look at the classroom. I don't see a whole lot of technology in there. And then let's look at the home. 80% of learning occurs outside of school. So we actually need to compete in that bedroom. In that bedroom. How do you get a kid to pay attention to education when they have all those other options that are far more interesting, you know, from their perspective? Games, games, games. I'm sure many of you know this. If you're part of the video game culture, then you certainly know these stats. If you've listened to, or if you've watched your kids play games, then you know it as well. In the next 10 years, there will be 1 billion virtual world users. It's a lot of users. It's a lot of users. Over half the population of the States plays video games, 174 million people. By 21, the average youth will play 10,000 hours of video games. If you put that into 8-hour workdays, that's 3.5 years of game playing. That's more than most people spend in their first job out of college. The average age of your gamer is 34 years old. 34. That means that your teachers who are graduating right now are all a member of this generation. And they're wondering, where are the tools that I can use? The other aspect of that is that actually means that when you go into community college and college, about 30% of our community college students end up having to redo math and redo English. So you can actually apply this to the college framework. 43% of gamers are women. A lot of people think this is a boys' sport. It actually isn't. 43%. And in fact, the fastest growing, one of the fastest growing demographics within the video game world is women over the age of 35. Not exactly who I'm trying to teach, but you know, we'll take it. And about 51 out of 53 million, so about 93% of students play video games. And they look a lot like that young girl down at the bottom. What do kids care about? This is a cultural problem that we're trying to solve, right? Kids in the United States care about games, they care about their friends, they care about rewards, and they care about stuff. That's what they care about. And we want to try to figure out how to get them to care about x plus y equals 5. So one solution, as you've heard, is video games. And why? Because video games are among the most powerful learning tools ever created. And I mean that. And the reason why I say that is because if you watch a child with a new video game, what happens? They pick it up, they start playing for 5 minutes, they fail, they start again. They'll play for 10 minutes, they fail, they start again. They'll play for 15 minutes, they fail, they start again. They will do that 5 times, 10 times, 100 times before they finally succeed. They're motivated to do it by themselves all along the way. They will go to the internet if they need help. They will ask their friends if they need help. They will buy cheat books if they need help. What is the first thing that a kid does inside the classroom when they don't know the answer? They raise their hand. They raise their hand. Okay, so we have a completely different culture inside the classroom than we do inside the video game world. So we're going to have to innovate our way to relevance. So here's how we decided to do it. First, let's make some really cool 3D games. Okay, here's one of our games. This is actually a maze that you're running through. You can see your other character, your friends, in the environment with you. And that question, that's a multiple choice question, and basically if you think that the answer is blue, then run to the left. If you think the answer is yellow, then you run to the right. If you think it's red, then you run backwards. And if you get it wrong, you get to the next section. If you've gotten it wrong, it'll bring you back to this intersection. Okay, so the failure for kids in doing something like this is that their friends are getting ahead and their friends are actually beating them. It is not that you're sitting inside a classroom and you're feeling silly or you're feeling stupid or you're feeling dumb or like you don't know the answer. What else? Let's add that whole virtual and real reward component. So this is pretty innovative. We actually created something called educational allowance. How many of you give your kids allowance? Wow, not that many. Maybe I'm talking to the wrong audience. All right, so I got allowance. Basically what you can do is you can set up your kids so that if they achieve the goals in the system, right, getting 20 questions right over the course of the week or whatever, they can earn their allowance, $5 a week. All right, they can earn that and they can get it, they can save up for the next Nintendo, the next iPod, whatever, and here's a sample of some of the items that are there. Now this becomes really interesting because of course, over time we have 1 million kids in our system. What is it worth to Best Buy or any number of organizations if I were to give them the electronics category? Any affiliate. I can drive kids towards this sort of stuff. And I'm not below the whole celebrity culture, right? We do tournaments. I'll show you some of that sort of stuff. But this most recent tournament, this was with Mindless Behavior and Grace and Chance. A school here in New York won. They came here, they did a performance. The school beat out 900 other schools across the country to have the performance come here. So again, giving the kids what they want, but forcing them along the way to do the education and to do the math in this particular case. And this is some of the innovations. This is something that doesn't get much play. I brought this textbook on purpose. This is actually Pearson, largest textbook company in the world. This is the first time that this has ever been done in terms of marketing, where you have a call out on the inside part of the book to a video game, an educational video game. And we did that and went out to their millions of kids. I like to say that's the equivalent of doing what was done with Steve Jobs in the music industry, but you know, we didn't have the same success, unfortunately. Textbook companies are very, very difficult to play, very difficult to work with. But on the social side, well, why not have distribution go socially as well? Let's let the kids invite their friends in through Facebook or let them challenge, you know, each other to these games. I'm using this as an example of what is happening inside the education industry as a whole. These boxes all don't pop up at the same time. But you have the ability to, if the kid is over 13. And this is one of the biggest challenges with education. It's the reason why you don't have like the folks who started Facebook and LinkedIn and all the rest of that coming into education for kids who are under 13, because you can't actually do that. So this is for a kid who's over 13. But for kids who are under 13, I can't have them connect on Facebook. I can't have them talk to each other. Child online privacy protection rules keep that from happening. So how do you actually get this thing to spread? It's all about word of mouth. I would love to be Club Penguin. So in the process of this whole thing, let's crush the resistance. And I did say that this whole thing was about hope. It's about the hope of getting our kids engaged in education, etc. Does this actually work? So let me show you something that might give a sense of whether or not this works.
Eyewitness News at 5.
A lot of kids play video games for fun, but they can also be educational. And today, some New York students took part in a video game tournament in front of hundreds of their peers. Education reporter Art McFarlane was there.
These kids had played all semester and now had the final tournament.
You would think this was a sporting event, considering all the cheering and banners, not to mention the mascot. The kids were cheering for their classmates, one contestant from each of 30 public schools in a video game tournament. The games require standard gaming skills with math along the way.
The object of the game is to answer math questions to win points.
They spent weeks practicing for what is called the Mega Bowl. We visited Brooklyn's PS312 earlier this week. Andre Hernandez was their player at the tournament.
I'm excited and a little bit scared because everybody's counting on me to win.
Tournaments like this are held across the nation. The software was developed for schools.
When you walk in here, you think it's a basketball game, but it's actually an academic competition. That's a beautiful thing.
What's good about this game?
Well, you're playing and enjoying, and you're doing math and playing at the same time.
In his round, Andre came in a respectable second to a player from PS 55 in the Bronx.
I feel great, and I expected to win, and I did.
But in a special round for teachers, PS 312 was the winner.
I think it was great that I could do it in front of my students to show that if you play hard and if you work on your math, you can really accomplish something.
The Department of Education says that it would someday like to bring this excitement and the promise of improving math skills this way to every public school child in the city. In Morningside Heights, Manhattan, Art McFarland, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Now, people ask me all the time, they say, why do you keep doing this? It's so difficult, it's challenging, all the rest of that sort of thing. That is one of the reasons, but let me show you something else. I'm gonna turn this down. So this was down in Texas. Watch the kid on the right. This is more fun on a mobile phone. He just won. This was math. We're really happy the seat was there, because that would have been a little dangerous. And then people always ask us, okay, so is this just about boys? Are boys the only ones that get into it? Well, actually, no. So, Texas again, Garland, Texas. He thinks he won. He thinks he won. She knows she won. She knows it. All right. All right. Let me go on to the next. So my point is that, look, despite all of the challenges that we talk about and all the challenges that we have out there, there is hope. When I talk about getting kids excited about education, getting them excited about math, I'm talking about that. I'm talking about kids inviting other kids and other friends in because they think that they're playing a game, but really it's a study group. Really it's a study group. I'm talking about a fundamental realignment of the way we think about education. So I don't really know what else there is to say, except game on. Thank you very much, everyone. Does anyone have any questions? Yes?
How would you apply it, let's say, to English?
To English? Do I have time? I could actually show you a game. Does anyone want to see that? All right, I'll show you a game. I never know whether or not to actually do that, but okay. Be careful, I might put you on. Now, whenever I do these games, I personally always choose elementary because I don't want to embarrass myself. But if you guys are going to help me with the answers, then we can choose middle school or high school. Whenever I play the kids, they always like, okay, you do high school, and we'll do elementary. And then they put me on math. I'm doing polynomials, they're doing 3 plus 3. And then they win. Anyway, so inside the game itself, first of all, you can go into the locker. This is my character. He's called the man. So if the kids beat him, they can say they beat the man. If I beat them, I say the man beat you down, try harder. Okay. So you can actually choose different characters, and you can actually customize your character, so I could choose a different nose if I wanted, but I can only do that and only buy those sorts of things by actually doing the math and earning the currency inside the games. There is some music in the background there. So let me choose literacy, and I'm going to choose, let's do middle school literacy. But I'm going to ask you if you want to answer. I need help from the gallery. So let me choose a game called Velocity. I'm going to create my game room. I could set a password or whatever. All right, so level G is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. 4th grade. What do you want to do? Do you want to do language conventions, parts of speech, reading, vocabulary, writing process? Vocabulary. Vocabulary, all right. Dictionary entries, analogies, foreign words and phrases. What's his name? I'm feeling like Alex Trebek right now. Multiple meaning words, words to know. What would you like? Multiple meaning words. All right, we're going to run this game. Oh, and so over here, like I said, I could choose the number of players that I'll see in the game at the same time with me, the number of laps around this course is like an obstacle course. And then I have the reward store. Like I said, you get a jetpack, you know, if you're in there. If you want to buy it, you could have super boots, super jump capabilities, all that sort of stuff. But you can only get that. If you actually answer the questions correctly. So, give me another 20 seconds. And I really am going to need help. You like that? Kind of funky, right? I always think that after a few years I'll have gotten tired of it. I'm not tired of it yet. Yes? No. Torque game engine. Torque, yeah. Yep. Okay, here we go. All right. Purple for literacy. Okay, so this is me, full 3D world, move around, etc. That's why I like the Unreal Tournament, right? Okay, so on the right, I'm actually the only one in this game right now, but you can see my game name, The Man. If there were other people, I could click the leaderboard and have that, you know, sort of drop down or whatever. On the bottom left, you'll see my character. As I accomplish the tasks, he will move along, you know, and other people would be represented there, so you'd be able to see where you could go. Okay, so every time I run through this arch, I'm going to get a multiple choice question. So there's my question. Which of these definitions does not apply to the word pack? Anyone from our studio audience? Which one? Green? Did I hear number 3? Yellow. Are we sure? This will be really embarrassing. Okay. All right, good. We got it correct. And now we have a jetpack, because kids like to fly. And it says, all right, follow the lane yellow. So we're going to go over to the yellow lane, and we're going to follow it across the canyon. And I am really good at flying these days. All right, so we made it through the first one. You can see my man advanced down at the bottom to the next stage. I'm going to go through the next one of these. Now, I go through, I get my question. Choose the word that best fits the blank in the sentence. They blank their children in the traditions of their culture. Which is it? Green. I hear red, I hear green. Green. They primed their children, or is it red? They reared, labored, fired? Okay. If I don't know, one of the things I can do is I can press H. That will actually take me to an instructor, to a tutorial on that. But let's say that I got it wrong. Let's say I got it wrong. What happens? So let's say I said it's blue. I think everyone will agree that it's not blue. What happens? Got it wrong. It pulls me back. All the way back, right? So the penalty is actually that your friends have advanced further than you have. That's the penalty in the game. And then you go and you do it again. And when you come out, you have the ability to see what you got right, what you got wrong, etc. So that's one of the games, and there are 4 others. But that's how we do literacy. And mathematics is pretty similar. I won't take up a whole lot of your time with that, but I think everyone gets the general idea. Are there any other questions? Yes, sir. Sean.
How did you go about getting this integrated into your school?
So what we do is we have a sales force and a phone sales force that actually sells to school districts. If they call us up, then we can have a conversation with them. But what also happens is that the kids can actually pass it on themselves. So let me see. So I talked to you about the system. So there is a consumer part to this system. And the kids can log on and just play and do this on their own, and that can get passed free of charge. So this is the system where the kids can jump in and they can see all of the friends that are on, below. And this is where the reward store is, so that, they can choose whatever it is that they want to go for. So that's free. Kids can just pass that free of charge. It's and this is where we do our affiliate marketing campaigns, etc. Sir.
Kids get rewarded for bringing new kids in, playing
Not yet, but it's an interesting thing. One of the big debates that we have is like this notion of teacher shortages, right? And one of the things that I fundamentally don't believe we have a teacher shortage in this country or any country around the world. I think we're incredibly inefficient at teaching. And what I mean by that is that right now we have this notion of what we call sage on the stage. So this is like sage on the stage. It's me and 20 or 30 students in the classroom. And I'm supposed to be the purveyor and, of all knowledge, which is just not true, right? So what we actually were able to do was to take that kid over there who knows conjugation, that kid that knows algebra, and we combined all of the knowledge in the classroom. We probably have like 9 teachers. If we gave them a system to allow them to do that. So would you like to join our design team? The next component of this is giving kids rewards for actually helping each other and bringing each other in so that they can both reduce recruiting fees and actually reduce the teacher labor costs. Just don't tell the unions.
Do you get to the next level, or do you become the teacher at some point?
Can you compete with the teacher?
No, do you as you go on in the game? Yeah. Does your first you're a student? Do you become a senior and then maybe eventually a teacher in some
advancement? Yeah. Again, not yet. That is something that we're doing. There are other games that we created which talks to a slightly different issue. You guys mind? I'm going to go slightly deep on philosophy around the game for a sec. You must have noticed those were multiple choice questions. And many people ask us, this answers your question in some way, many people ask us, why'd you do that? That doesn't seem very innovative, that doesn't seem very interesting. Why did you do that? Why didn't you integrate education into the environment and innovate? And the answer to that was that we actually did. We created a game which allowed you to progress. It was actually more like one of the games that you traditionally get where you started and you went all the way through to the big boss at the end. And it had, for example, at the top left of the screen, you guys remember the coordinate access, X, Y, all that stuff? Okay, so it had that. Then it had the little character running around in the world. And on the ground, on the grid, it had a grid. And so if you ran your character to 5, 3, then your arrow would go to 5, 3 on the coordinate axis. And so this flat thing that's inside a textbook, all of a sudden kids realized, wow, this could actually be moving around New York City. And we had much deeper understanding from kids as to what these things and what these topics were. Guess who hated it? The teachers. The teachers hated it. And the reason that they hated it was because video games are all about exploration. You run around, you bump into the door. Now I'm curious about how I get through the door because I want to see the boss that's on the other side. Teacher's like, we don't have time for that. We got 45 minutes in the classroom. I don't have time for someone to run 2 minutes to get to a door and then try to figure it out. I'd rather be doing a worksheet. The other component was a lot of teachers were over the age of 34. And they hadn't grown up with video games. And they didn't believe that unless you saw an equation or unless you saw an actual problem, that there was actual education in it. They just didn't believe it. So as we push this out into schools, we actually have to pull back to multiple choice questions and become a little less like what you're talking about. But we're looking forward to moving there because I think the whole paradigm is changing now. Yes?
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
Have you considered some type of play where, since one of the biggest issues I know, my kids bring home horrible cans of popcorn we have to buy from school and gift wrap and so much crap that we don't need, nor do we want, but we're trying to support our schools.
Right.
Have you considered some sort of opportunity with the rewards to make it some sort of fundraiser?
Yes. Yes. So that is sort of the next step. Now the system is set up. We would actually love to have like game weeks. This is kind of like Girl Scout cookies, right? Except that everyone can get involved. So we'd love to do like fundraisers, with this where a portion of the proceeds, because one of the things we know, kids and especially little girls love to donate to animal shelters. As an example. So being able to take this and with what you earn, especially around the Christmas season, not just buy your own reward, but be able to donate to some charity or some cause, including your school, is actually something that we're looking at very closely.
Question I have: how do you position it where, like, I have 2 kids, and since they were born, we brought them things like Leapster and other educational handheld games.
Right. Right.
How do you differentiate the products when you're explaining it to schools or whatever the case is?
So the question is, how do we differentiate the products when we explain this to schools? versus like Leapfrog or Leapster or the other stuff that's out there. First and foremost, we show those videos. Like none of the other products have reactions like that. I think that most people, when they hear or they think about educational video games, they think they know it. So they remember Oregon Trail. I don't know if you guys remember that from back in the day. That's what I grew up on, right? Oregon Trail. Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? The old math blaster. Mavis Bacon teaches typing. That's how I learned how to type. They remember all of that stuff. So they assume that they know what an educational video game is. This looks nothing like that. This is three-dimensional. So the second that we show them, it becomes a differentiator. Unfortunately, one of the things that hasn't happened a lot in the educational gaming space is a lot of data. We actually have data that shows increased scores like 20–30%. But a lot of the genre doesn't have that data, and so they also assume that we're not that serious. So it takes a while for us to sort of get in, have that conversation. But the data differentiates us as well. Any other questions? Yes.
Good morning. My name is Joni Ward. I truly enjoyed your presentation, but I want to take this to a different level. I'm a professor in the MBA program at Trinity University in Washington, D.C. And one of the classes I teach is financial decision making. So I'm teaching discounted cash flow, DCF, how to do an evaluation for a company. Sure. My students are intimidated by numbers, so I'm just curious, is there any vision of, taking this to the college level possibly? Yeah, in fact, that's the reason why I highlighted the statistic that the average age was 34, because, the college students, like I said, 30% of them end up having to do remedial math. So they come in not really having a mastery of algebra, and there's a statistic that says that you are 3 times more likely to go to college if you've mastered algebra, right? So algebra is the gatekeeper, and a lot of our kids come in, we have to redo it. So yes, we would love to take it to the college level. We haven't done that yet. But these environments, I mean, we play in the office all the time, and those are like 25 to 40-year-old people making a lot of noise, around this stuff. So we know that it's applicable. We just haven't done it yet. Reduce a lot of stress for my students.
Absolutely. So one of the big things in games, there was an advisor of ours, James Paul G., who wrote a book called "What Video Games Have to Teach Us About Learning and Literacy." And he broke down 36 components around great games and how that could actually be applied to, education just in general, even if you don't have a game. And one of it was exactly what you said. A game provides a safe environment to fail. Kids do not feel, at any age, feel the pressure of sitting up in the classroom and saying, I don't know what I'm doing. They actually feel all right, and the results are all private. Another big thing is personalization. That's why we did the avatars. So there are a whole range of elements that can be incorporated.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions, thoughts, concerns, design, advice? Yes? Yeah, so you can actually go, your kids can jump on, sign up for an account, and play free of charge. Online. Absolutely.
Question.
Yes?
Have you learned anything from Khan Academy?
Yeah. So Saul has done a really, really good job of doing what I call the teaching component of it. And, it's a different thing, right? I was actually, we were actually interviewed at the same time on CNBC, and they asked us, do the two of you conflict with each other? And I said, absolutely not. Because what I consider myself to be doing here is adding that element of engagement. When you get to the question, I want the student, when they get to the question, to say, how do I solve this? Then they can go to Khan Academy and actually learn how to do it and then come back. And in fact, I'd love to give them points for actually going and doing that. So I did not build this to actually teach. I built it to get you to the point where you're like, I need to know. I want to know. So 2 different things. Does anyone have any other questions? Really meant this to be more of just a sort of general perspective and overview, not so much about the system itself. Hey.
Yeah, is it possible to tie kids' allowance to the rewards of the game for home use? Or?
Yes. So their allowance, you set up their allowance. You as a parent would say $5, $10 a week. The only way they get it is if they accomplish the academic tasks we set for them in the game. That's the only way they get it. So yeah. Yes?
Can you elaborate on the business side?
Sure. So we have two ways of making money, essentially. We sell to schools and school districts. That's a subscription for the schools. And then separately on the consumer side, we basically get, we're like a retailer. So we get 10 to 30% markups on whatever kids buy of those items inside the store. So if a lot of kids are buying a lot of stuff, and the good thing is because we use drop shippers in most cases, we don't actually have to take on any of the costs. So any money that comes in is completely, ours. It comes from the retail items. What is not revenue is the $5 or $10 that your parent transfers to you. That's not revenue to us. We actually have to pay for that because we absorb the credit card costs. Does anyone have, yes? That are not, so. Right. So I don't have any data or statistics on that. What I will say is that we've done surveys with kids inside the classroom. So the question is, does this actually do its job so well that no other class is cool enough? And so kids stop paying attention in the other classes. So the answer to that is we don't have any data on it, but what we have seen is about 85 to 90% of kids, after using this, say that they find math or literacy more interesting, right? And a lot of people say, well, why isn't that number higher? Doesn't everyone play video games? I then ask, well, how many kids do you think would say that they like this? And the answer would be down to 20%. So what we find is that the kids appreciate it more regardless of their level of achievement. The kids that are at a lower level of achievement, they actually have higher gains because they need to be re-engaged in the process. Those who are at higher levels of achievement just like the format a lot better. But we haven't done any studies to see whether or not it actually decreases attention, anywhere else. Haven't done that. Yes? Oh, they pulled it down. The contact, yeah, it's, could you push it? Oh, okay, there we go. Yes, I do run a tech company, sorry. There you go. Does anyone have any final questions, thoughts, concerns, issues, advice in the back?
Yeah, how are you finding the resistance from teachers feeling they're going to be displaced?
Yeah.
Industrial revolution through the technological revolution, which is really part of how do you present it so that you get over the resistance from the unions and so on? How do teachers retrain, for instance, to be part of what you're doing? Right.
So the answer is how do we overcome the resistance that teachers might feel because ultimately they're going to be displaced, or ultimately they might be displaced by this. And the answer to that is right now we present as a complement to what they're doing. So that's where I say I don't do the instruction part. The instruction can be left completely to the teacher. They can figure out how to integrate into this classroom, whether or not they want to send it home, whether or not they want to use it in an after-school program. So right now, we're not having to deal with that conversation. I suspect that what's going to end up happening is there's just going to be a generational shift. It's going to end up being, as people become more comfortable, and a lot of teachers are now on Facebook, for example, the shift that needs to happen in mindset is one where teachers ultimately realize they're not in control. And they need to be okay with that. The teacher needs to move to a place where they are facilitating the interactions and actually advising the students on, hey, when you go online, for example, here's how you figure out what you should and should not be thinking about, looking at, et cetera, and facilitating that. And that is a mindset shift that right now is difficult to perpetuate. So we're just going after the early adopters. Those who are already there, that's our customer base. Those are the people who we want to talk to, and the rest will change over time. Is there anything else? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate it.